Hey guys, I'm going to show you how to analyze your losses in a systematic way that I think will help you both understand your game a little bit better, as well as help you point out your weaknesses for your future training and study. So uh, the idea here is that a lot of times when a lot of times when we lose, we just don't want to look at the game again. But sometimes our losses can be the most important things for us to study because they can point out um, maybe systemic issues we have with our game. That if we can correct them, then that would add to our chess strength and help us to get better. So the first step here and now a couple things. First off, and I've mentioned this in some of my writing, is that I think it's very important to start your analysis without using the chess engine. I don't. There's some like International Master Dave Pruis, of course, he's very strong. Doesn't believe that non-masters should use the chess engines almost at all, and I kind of understand the sentiment behind that, but I do think there is some usefulness to them at some point in the process. But I do think you should try to look at things yourself. Why? Partly it's practice. You will not have the chess engine there with you when you're playing a game, and so you want to develop your habits of thinking and analysis. Okay, so let's keep moving. What the way that we're going to start this is we're going to go to the end of the game, and so this is one of my losses against a master, and it was actually a rough game. So maybe it's a good game to do together because I don't know if I'd want to go over this myself. So we're going to start with the last move here, and I resigned at this point because I can see here that White is going to fork my king and my knight. And the general process is we're going to move back and try to find moves, see if we can find better moves. And through this process, we might find, for example, here, this is pretty much forced. Well, here, for example, I don't know, is there a different, obviously I want to recapture this rook and I took with the king and that would lead to the fork. So is there a way maybe that I would taking with the knight improve the situation? Now, of course, if you look at the material here, um, I have an extra piece, but he has one, two, three, four, five extra pawns. So he has much compensation for the piece. So here we don't fall to the fork, but I still think this is a very difficult game for uh, for black. So, for example, here he can attack my knight, and looking at this, it looks the knight can't really go anywhere. So it looks like, unless I want to sacrifice some material back, but it looks like I have to protect, for example. And already here we can see that this is pretty crushing for white. Let's see here. Let's attack the rook, and here, uh, he can attack my knight, for example. And if my knight, let's try to stay active. And again, you want to kind of think here, but you can always go back and look at different things here. Um, here I'm trying to stay a little active here, trying to cover some key squares. But then the problem is here is that after this, he's going to play rook to f7, and of course I can just give my piece back, and that will not be very good. For example, if I do something like this, and then after he takes back, even though I have maybe a tiny bit of compensation with these pawns, he just has too much. I mean, he even has these pawns here. So I can analyze this a little bit and see, yes, I could have played that instead. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back even further. So we see that that's one way I could have improved a little, but it's still winning for white. So the general idea here is that we're going to keep going back and try to find better moves we could have played. In some cases, we won't be able to, until we get to a position, maybe where either the position's even, or maybe we were even winning. Okay, so let's go back here. In this case, I lost this pawn. Let's go back to. So this move here looks pretty forced. My rook is being threatened, so I have to go here. So let's go back even further. Okay. Okay. So now we have this position. And what I did during the game was I captured on g4, and then he attacked me with the pawn, and it brought my rook here, and then he won another pawn. So we want to see if we can improve on this position. And again, this is the first time I'm looking at this since I played the game. Of course, the game was played a couple weeks ago, so you can see how painful it is sometimes to go over your losses. But let's go back here. And then, so here we could actually evaluate this decision to capture the queen. And the whole point here is that he is threatening to trade queens and then just capture this bishop, which is probably why I took during the game. Ideally, I would have maybe looked at this or wrote down my thoughts before I made this move. Now, one thing I'm seeing now is that even though this rook is being attacked, I have perhaps a counterattack. For example, queen takes c4, now threatening his knight. Then I could see already the problem with that is that after queen takes c4, the rook takes c4, now he has here. And looks like I can maybe grab this pawn as well. And then maybe we can assess this position. Actually, let's look at a couple more forcing moves. Rook takes b7. And here we can see I'm already in a little bit of trouble here because if I move my knight here, then he's going to pin it, or he can just win it with a fork. Or there's really nowhere else I can go here to try to save this knight. So we have to go back in our analysis. So I'm just trying to show you how to systematically analyze this. Are there any other options other than trading queens here? So that is the question. The queen is protected. So can I possibly just move the bishop instead? Let's see. There's a few spots during the game. I moved it to here at some point. And then after, I still run into a little trouble because this pawn is already weak. And so that's going to lead us to further analysis in a little bit. So let's say he trades queens. We trade, and then he takes this pawn, now attacking here. And you can see here now this knight is actually trapped. So this line doesn't, well, let's count the material here. I am up a piece, so a piece for a few pawns at this point. But still, it looks pretty bad here. This rook is pretty active. So we go back. And so maybe I did have to take here, but even at this point, white already has a pretty dominating position. So let's keep going. We're going to keep going back. Okay, and here I played this knight to g5. Now, the reason why we're going backwards, which is interesting, is because you can use your knowledge of what happened in the game to tell you maybe what you don't want to do. So here, after we know that if we play this, that our opponent's going to play this. And we see here that this position's already bad for white. So is there something we can do different here? Okay. What I'm going to do just to kind of move this along here is we're going to go back a few more moves and try to find the critical position. Okay. I've gone through this process systematically, and we are now at the position here where the position is about even. So everything after this point white is winning based on the move that I made. Let me show you what that was. In the game, I played the horrible knight to a7. And honestly, I'm not quite sure what my idea was. Actually, I think I do. I think my idea was to play something like my rook here, my knight here, and then either my bishop or my knight to d6. That was the idea behind knight to a7. So, but as you can see, and let me show you what happens in the game. He blocks off, he protects this pawn, and I played the rook here, and he plays his knight here, and I move my uh, bishop back to avoid getting it traded here. And then what happens is instead of playing my knight here like I thought when I first made this move, I doubled rooks. Okay, so here I could have played knight to c8. Now my position at this point is not great because this rook here can get into a little trouble. He's going to be forced maybe to swing over to the king's side. But this would have been better than keeping my knight. As you remember from earlier in the video, this knight is on a7 the rest of the game. So, but let's go back. Now that we know that this is sort of the first big mistake that kind of leads me on the road to the loss, now we can look for different options. And here, just to show you, I played this a5 move. I thought this was pretty strong because the idea here was to do exactly what I did, which was either to exchange it, in which case the a file becomes open for me, or if to play as he played in the game, and then have this c5 square. So I had the right positional idea. I just made a horrible positional blunder by moving my knight to a7. So here's where I want to learn from this, and let's look at our different options. Okay, so this is not good because it's hanging. These two moves are not good. Now, obviously, I have to move the knight, right? So that's kind of the first, I guess, before I would go into looking at all the moves, I would see, do I have to move the knight? Like, do I have a bigger threat? But in this case, I don't. And so my last two moves here are this knight to d8 and knight to b8. Now, we can look at this a from a positional standpoint and hopefully see that moving it to d8 is probably not that great. The reason why is, let's just go ahead and make that move, is that you can see here that all of the possible squares for the knight are now covered. And so this knight just gets in the way of this rook, and it really doesn't have, otherwise we'd have to make more concessions, move this bishop here to move this knight here, which maybe is the thing. I'd have to calculate it out, but we can much easier see a path of doing something like this. Knight to b8 to d7 to c5, which would be in alignment with moving this pawn here and creating this structure in the first place. So let's take a look at that. Knight to b8, and let's say that white plays as he did in the game. Well, of course, we could see, we'd want to assess this too. If bishop takes, then rook takes, and then I think at this point the game's about even. He got rid of his very active bishop for my potentially active knight, and although now my rook will have to move back to get more active, material and structures look like they're pretty dynamically balanced. Okay, so we can always assess that that's fine for me. But if he plays as he did in the game by putting his knight here on d5, we again now we have some maybe additional choices. We can actually play the bishop over here as well. Well, at least we could calculate it, and we could see whether this e4 is dangerous for us. Let's see what else. Otherwise, we might have to move here to d7 again, and then think about what we want to do with our knight. But now our knight at least has a little more play. This bishop at some point can move. Let's say he protects here, and then we can make some general moves here, for example. Either rook to d8, or maybe even something like bishop to c5, taking advantage of this c5 square. And here is maybe where we can look at our analysis and see maybe at some point we can capture this knight in order to regain control of these light squares again, and then be able to move our bishop so that we can get our knight back into play. Okay, so the knight to b8 seems like it would be the better move. Now, so you would go through this process of moving backward through your games and seeing where you could find that critical position. Now, here's where I believe the critical position is. And then once you've done all of your analysis, and we've done a little bit here, but maybe I might want to explore some of the lines a little more. And I make sure you give yourself enough time. For example, on this position, make sure you give yourself at least 15, 20, maybe even half an hour if you really think this is a complex position. And after you feel that you understand it from a tactical standpoint and strategic standpoint, now at this point, we can turn on the engine. So I'm just going to show you that real quick and see if there's anything missed from what we just talked about. Okay, and we're going to go, let's go back here. Okay, and right now I'm going to turn the engine on. You're not going to be able to see it, but let's see what the engine says here. And, well, the engine does say that knight to b8 is the best move, and with an evaluation of half a pawn for black. So it's actually saying that black is better here. It actually says knight to d8 isn't horrible with an even game. Let's put it here and let it click here, but it is starting to say that white has a slight advantage. But we can see even on a positional standpoint that that is the case. And then if we move to knight to a7, here it says that white already has a maybe not a decisive advantage, but a very a definite advantage here with a plus 1.3 for white. So let's go ahead and look at some of our calculations here. After knight to b8, and we looked at a move like knight to d4. And here, the engine is actually suggesting, well, this is something we missed, although maybe hopefully I would have found it, is that this c3 pawn is hanging here. And did we miss this during the game, actually? Knight to, well, let's take a look at what happened in the game. Knight to a7, and then c4 was played. So after, let's say, knight to b8, so you want to kind of use what was played in the game as well as the engine analysis to try to understand the position. So here, let's look at c4, and then we have knight to d7, again looking to hop here, okay? And let's say he plays that knight to d4, like similar to what he did during the game. And here we can basically, we can't really move this bishop anymore, but we can make a move like knight to c5, which protects it and also occupies this nice square. This would have been a beautiful position for me. And again, it was attainable. It's not that I made the mistakes here. And although my opponent did very well to outplay me, of course, he is a master. And so even though that's expected, these moves hopefully now won't be that hard for me to find. Okay, and just to show you here, this isn't what the engine suggests, but after knight takes and queen takes, we just have a very nice position for black. This rook is going to come over here. And, this pawn is going to be bad for the rest of the game. This knight can hop over here at some point. It's just a very nice position. I mean, we even have ideas here with things like this. At some point we can contest this bishop. This is what I should have played. Okay? So just going back here. Now, once we've seen that, we have to think to ourselves, well, what was I thinking and what could I have thought differently? And I guess in this example, when I played this knight to a7, if the idea was, and let's go ahead and play through the game, is if my idea was to get active this way, then it's important to look at this variation and say, well, can I actually accomplish this? Because right now, after something like knight to b3, attacking this rook, now I think we have a little bit of trouble. Let's say the rook comes out to h5, for example. Then, white can even think of something like e4, threatening to undermine this defender. Okay, so that can be very dangerous as well. So analyzing it here after the game hopefully will help inform us, and these types of thoughts will come up during the game. So my basic assumption when I played knight to a7 was faulty, because white has a lot of moves that would be very annoying, that would prevent me from following through with my plan, or at least delaying it. And then the other question I need to ask myself, let's go back. At this point, did I even consider knight to b8 and knight to d8? And I did. I don't think I considered knight to d8, which I think intuitively just looked bad to me. But knight to b8 is definitely something I should have looked at with considering this control over the c5 square. So these are things that I might want to catalog, and also maybe create a flashcard. What I do, I do that on Chessable, create a review position that will come up and I can review later. I could always show you how to do that if you're interested. But it's this process of going back and looking at your thought process, analyzing positions for your losses, and finding those moves that will help you to improve. And also, I think in this way, I'm encouraged, because at this point in the game, this is move 22. This is move 22. I have an advantageous position against someone who's rated about 300 points higher than me. So it's encouraging, even though I made a mistake here and lost the game, it's also encouraging because I was in the game for a long time. And if I learn from my mistakes and make these decisions a little bit better next time, but when I play my opponent next time, I will be better prepared. But you can't get there unless you analyze these losses and figure out how to improve those areas in which you're weak. Okay, to sum up this video, I wanted to show you this graph on the bottom here. The graph, Elite Chess does this. I think Chess.com also does this. Chess.com, you might need to have a premium membership. But if we go back to the end of the game here, we can see that white is totally winning, as we know. And the key is that even though this Lead Chess will do this in about a minute or 30 seconds, you don't want to look at this when you first start analyzing your game. You want to start back here, and I'm sort of summarizing the process. And move by move, you're going to work your way back. And remember those early moves we analyzed? We said, okay, white was winning here. White was winning. And you want to slowly, or not so slowly, work your way back to this position where it is even here. We actually see white had a little bit of an advantage here in the middle game, but he made a mistake here. So this b4 or b5 move was actually a mistake. And this is the point at which I could have had at least an even game, maybe even a slightly better game. So, and I don't want to be redundant here, but the process of working back yourself without using the chess engine, without knowing this, will give you so many insights into your thought process, into your analysis process, and really help you to hone in on your areas of weakness when it comes to your chess. Because maybe some of the things you notice along the way here are things that, maybe there's moves you didn't even look at. Maybe there's concepts of strategy, maybe with pawn structure, or maybe with piece trades that you did not understand when you played this game. And if you just throw it in the engine and say, okay, I made this mistake, I blundered here, okay, done, then you're going to miss out on those insights. Okay? Well, I think that that about sums it up for today. Start from the end and work your way back, and that analysis along the way hopefully will give you many insights to improve your chess. Hey guys, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. I really think that analyzing your games, especially your losses, is one of the most valuable things you can do to improve your chess. And hopefully this gives you a little bit of a systematic way to do it. Check out my e-newsletter. Every week or two, I will write some chess tips or some thoughts that I have. I promise not to spam your inbox. Also, if you want to consider supporting the channel, you can become part of Team Backrankbrawler. You can check out my Patreon link down in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.